Fast food used to be the ultimate safety net, a predictable transaction where the trade-off was clear. It wasn't healthy, but it was fast, and crucially, it was cheap. You could feed yourself for $5 and move on with your day. But today, that same combo costs enough to make your nervous system pause, and your breakfast sandwich with a coffee can feel like a small accounting error against your own future. You are in the drive-through lane at 6:14 p.m. Your shoulders are tight. Your blood sugar is low. Your phone is buzzing with leftover obligations from a job that has already taken too much from you. And then you see the total on the screen and your brain glitches. Not because you are surprised that prices went up. You know they went up. Everybody knows they went up. The glitch happens because one part of your mind is living in current reality, and another part is still running old software. One part is looking at a nearly $20 transaction for a meal that is not nourishing you, not stabilizing you, not moving your life forward. The other part is still operating under a legacy instruction set. I'm hungry, I'm busy, I go to McDonald's. That is the outdated script. That is the architecture underneath. And if you do a forensic audit of the psyche, the revelation is not that you are weak. It is that your behavior still belongs to an older economy. McDonald's own U.S. pricing document says average menu prices were up about 40% over 5 years, with a Big Mac meal rising from $7.29 in 2019 to $9.29 in 2024. A 10-piece McNuggets meal from $7.19 to $9.19, and medium fries from $2.29 to $3.29. Longer range comparisons found McDonald's menu prices across 10 items doubled on average from 2014 to 2024, with some items more than doubling and the McChicken nearly tripling. Your brain learned one set of rules in a world where the economic justice of the transaction still felt intact. It is not updated at the same speed as the menu board. So when you pull in, you are not making a clean, rational, present-tense decision. You are reenacting habitual purchasing behavior from a time when the numbers still made sense. You're not broken, you're not lazy, you're not a sucker. You are watching an old reflex try to survive in a new price regime, and that reflex is now expensive enough to function like a private tax on your exhaustion. That is why the phrase cognitive price dissonance matters. You know the meal is overpriced, but the script still whispers that it is normal, deserved, efficient, harmless, temporary. You tell yourself it's just tonight, but the psyche does not experience just tonight as a single event. The psyche experiences repetition. The psyche experiences grooves, and every time the old script fires without resistance, the groove deepens. This is not a morality play. This is forensic accounting. This is the moment where you stop asking, "Why am I like this?" and start asking, "What system is still running that no longer serves me?" That shift is everything, because shame keeps you in the car, but observation gets you out of it. And once you stop moralizing and start auditing, the convenience argument begins to collapse under its own weight. Because what are you actually buying now? This is where the convenience fraud has to be exposed with clinical honesty. The old deal was simple: low quality, low cost, high speed. It was a compromise, but it was an intelligible compromise. Now the compromise has mutated. Now it is not healthy, not cheap, and barely convenient. You leave work, sit in traffic to enter a second line of traffic, idle behind 8 cars, repeat your order into a damaged speaker, pay restaurant prices for industrial food, and then consume it so fast your nervous system barely registers that feeding happened. The body gets salt, sugar, fat, a dopamine event, and then a slump. The wallet gets lighter. The kitchen at home remains empty. Tomorrow, the problem resets. That is not convenience. That is deferred inconvenience with branding. Do the comparison that your stressed brain avoids. A grocery store rotisserie chicken routinely sells in the $6.99 to $8.99 range at chains like Ralph's, Gelson's, and Whole Foods, and the economics are so favorable that in some cases the cooked bird is cheaper than the raw one. Translation: one grocery shortcut can feed you multiple times, especially if you pair it with bread, microwave rice, salad mix, tortillas, frozen vegetables, or pre-cut fruit. Meanwhile, a single fast food run often produces one meal, one temporary mood adjustment, and one new justification for doing it again tomorrow. This is why vampire costs is the right phrase. They do not arrive as dramatic financial catastrophe. They enter politely. They wear the mask of convenience. They say, this is just a burger, just a coffee, just a wrap, just a bad day, just because you deserve a break. Then they become the vampire into your house, invited in by routine, and once inside they feed quietly on margin, on recovery time, on metabolic stability, on the part of your budget that could have been building slack. People say they cannot afford to eat healthy, but often what they cannot afford is the convenience tax attached to unmanaged fatigue. Being broke is frequently not just an income condition, it is also a logistical condition, a decision design condition, a pattern condition. This is where the "I can't afford to eat healthy" myth starts to unravel. You do not need to become a homesteader with glass jars and a moral superiority complex. You need fewer emergency purchases. You need more low-friction calories that are already waiting for you before 5 p.m. You need to stop confusing restaurant dependency with convenience. Convenience that leaves you poorer, hungrier again in 3 hours and more cognitively depleted is not convenience. It is a leak. It is quality erosion under inflation camouflage. It is a system charging premium prices for degraded trade-offs while your brain still remembers the old value proposition and keeps signing the form. You're not lazy. You're not broken. You're not a sucker. You are responding exactly the way a tired mammal responds when an old reward pathway remains available, and the environment offers no equally frictionless alternative. That is why the solution is not self-attack, it is redesign. Now, we get to the part that matters most, because if you misunderstand the neuroscience, you will keep blaming your character for what is actually a design failure. By 5 p.m., your prefrontal cortex is not operating at its full negotiating power. It has been tasked all day with prioritizing, inhibiting impulses, switching contexts, answering messages, managing social signals, suppressing annoyance, forecasting deadlines, and pretending your stress is professionalism. Then you ask it to perform one more act of elegant restraint in a food environment engineered for immediacy. Of course, the old script wins. Healthy food choice, according to 2024 neuroscience research, is associated with activity in the dorsolateral, medial, and superior prefrontal cortices, and that process tracks with self-control oriented toward larger, delayed rewards rather than immediate ones. In plain English, choosing the better long-term option requires a brain region that is already exhausted by modern life. And yes, you have likely heard the famous claim that people make more than 200 food decisions a day. Newer researchers at the Max Planck Institute argue that exact number was built on flawed measurement and can distort how we think about eating behavior. Good. That nuance matters. We do not need fake precision. We need a correct model. Whether the true count is 200 or simply far too many, the mechanism remains the same. Food choice is a repeated decision environment, and repeated decision environments create fatigue. A 2025 narrative review on decision fatigue and food choice describes how depleted mental energy can reduce willpower, impair prioritization, and increase impulsive, less health-conscious selections. That means your evening drive-thru is not evidence that you secretly love wasting money. It is evidence that you are encountering mathematical inevitability inside an environment you did not design. The system presents you with a high availability, low-effort, hyper-palatable option at the exact hour your executive function is thinnest. Then it sells the result back to you as a personal failure. This is the scam beneath the scam, because if you can be convinced that your problem is discipline, you will never investigate the architecture underneath. You will keep making vows in the parking lot. You will keep saying, starting tomorrow. You will keep trying to overpower biology with speech, but the body does not obey speeches. The body obeys pathways, defaults, and environmental cues. This is why the willpower myth is so destructive. It makes you feel defective for being human. It tells you the burger won because you are morally unserious, when in reality you were being outmaneuvered by pricing systems and menu systems that understand your biology better than you do. A fast food corporation does not need you to be stupid. It only needs you to be tired. It does not need you to be reckless. It only needs your old script to remain unedited. You are not broken. You are not lazy. You are not a sucker. You are a person whose inner software is being exploited by external incentives that are sophisticated, persistent, and perfectly willing to convert your depletion into revenue. Once you see that, the shame begins to fall away. And once shame falls away, observation becomes possible. Then intervention becomes possible. Then authorship becomes possible. That is the beginning of power. But the psychological audit is still incomplete until you connect the meal to the job. Because the $20 burger is rarely about hunger alone. Very often it is a hidden tax for workplace stress. It is an emotional handling fee for overexposure to emails, customers, managers, performance metrics, commutes, fluorescent lighting, social masking, decision overload, and the low-grade dissociation required to stay employable in systems that extract more life than they return. When you say, "I deserve this," what you often mean is, something has been taken from me, and I need an immediate purchasable form of relief. That is the work scam connection. The meal is not dinner, the meal is compensation theater. But here is the forensic question. How many life hours are you trading for that theater? Forget gross salary for a moment. Gross salary is a flattering hallucination. Gross salary does not include commuting time, unpaid recovery time, appearance maintenance, convenience spending created by exhaustion, stress purchases, delivery fees, subscriptions you forgot to cancel, the cognitive fog that makes you outsource basic tasks at premium prices, or the fact that an expensive city can metabolize a large income without producing actual freedom. That is the gross salary illusion. And it is why the high-income poverty trap is real. You can make $500,000 and still be structured like a financially fragile person if your life is arranged around constant convenience extraction. You do not solve the fast food problem by earning more if the additional earning comes bundled with more depletion, more outsourcing, more frictionless consumption, and more vampire costs entering the house in nicer packaging. That is why the real hourly wage matters more than the one on the offer letter. If you earn $30 an hour but the job leaves you so depleted that you default to $20 dinners, $7 coffees, delivery apps, last-minute grocery runs, weekend burnout shopping, and medical neglect that slowly compounds, then the meal is not just $20, it is $20 plus the labor required to recover from the conditions that made the meal feel necessary in the first place. So ask the question with full clinical detachment. How many minutes of your finite life did this burger require? How much of your best cognition paid for the purchase before the card was even swiped? How much future optionality did you trade for 15 minutes of warm salt and branded nostalgia? This is not about becoming ascetic. This is about reclaiming economic honesty. Because once you see the transaction as a stress tax rather than a treat, something changes. The burger loses some of its seduction. The fries stop looking like rebellion and start looking like payroll leakage. The coffee and breakfast combo stops feeling harmless and starts reading like a recurring debit from the version of you that is trying to build a calmer life. This is the forensic audit of the psyche at its sharpest. The spending is not random, and it is not purely about taste. It is a symptom trail. Follow it carefully enough, and it leads you back to fatigue, unstructured evenings, empty kitchens, self-soothing through purchase, and a work life that has normalized emergency eating as a reward for survival. Once you see that, you stop asking whether you can be better and start asking how to stop letting one part of your life bill another part of your life for the damage. That is a radically different question. It is colder, it is kinder, and it leads to better answers. So what do you do with all of this? Not willpower, not a speech, not a burst of motivational theater that evaporates the first time you were hungry in a parking lot. You use automation and friction. You update the script. You become an architect. That means you stop trying to win each evening as if each evening were a referendum on your virtue, and you start installing defaults that make the expensive, depleting option slightly harder, and the boring, stabilizing option slightly easier. This is where the boring meal routine becomes a technology of freedom, not glamorous meal prep, not macro obsession, not culinary self-optimization as a new religion. Just a repeatable, low-drama set of foods that removes unnecessary decisions from the danger zone. Rotisserie chicken, microwave rice, bagged salad, Greek yogurt, frozen vegetables, eggs, oatmeal, sandwich bread, soup, tortillas, pre-cut fruit, cheese sticks. Whatever meets the standard of cheap enough, decent enough, easy enough, and already there. The purpose is not aesthetic pleasure. The purpose is to preserve prefrontal energy for decisions that actually build wealth, health, and peace. You are not trying to become the kind of person who never eats fast food again. That is too theatrical. You are becoming the kind of person whose environment no longer routes fatigue into premium-priced self-sabotage. You insert friction into the old script, delete the delivery apps, remove stored payment methods, choose a grocery stop on the route you already drive, keep one shelf and one freezer zone permanently stocked with emergency food. Decide in advance which 3 fallback meals count as acceptable on low-energy days, and define success so narrowly that your tired brain can still execute it. One grocery shortcut, one replacement, one updated loop. This is self-nudging in the most practical sense. You design the environment so the better choice requires less heroism. That matters because the future does not get built by your best intentions. It gets built by your default settings. And once the default settings change, something surprising happens. The drive-thru loses its emotional gravity. Not because you became superior, but because you finally made the old script obsolete. The meal is revealed for what it is, a legacy purchase from a version of your life that no longer deserves automatic authority. You are not broken. You are not lazy. You are not a sucker. You were simply living inside a script that had not been audited. Now it has. Now you can see the mathematical inevitability for what it is, and because you can see it, you can interrupt it. That is the empowerment here. Sober, unglamorous, structural. You stop negotiating with the symptom and start editing the system. You stop performing discipline and start building the architecture underneath. You stop inviting the vampire into your house. You stop paying restaurant prices for exhaustion management. You stop confusing income with freedom and convenience with intelligence. And in that detachment, in that clean and unsentimental clarity, you become the person who no longer asks, "Why do I keep doing this?" You become the person who says, "I understand exactly why this keeps happening, and I have changed the conditions." That is what an architect sounds like. That is what an updated hunger script sounds like. Update your hunger script today. Replace one fast food run with a grocery store shortcut. We are building the architecture underneath the machine.